Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and what I want to do today is I want to just build using ExpressJS a to-do list. Okay, so I'm going to use Mongo as our database. I'm going to use what am I thinking? I'm going to be using Express as our backend framework, and I'm going to use HTMX and EJS to construct our front end. So EJS to do templating, to sort of pre-render our front end or our front end HTML, and HTMX to allow us to simulate front end reactivity, but still have like our back end kind of handle a lot of the work. Okay, so how do we do that? So first off, I just want to tell you that if you want to have your own MongoDB database, just head over to mongodb.com. Okay, it's one of many different services that allow you to kind of get a free database. So if a MongoDB you can get from here. If you wanted to get like a free Postgres database, you can get those from Render. Should have a free Postgres database service. So does Koyeb and Neon. Actually, NeonDB is probably the main choice nowadays. Neon.tech. Okay, and then Koyeb just released their free Postgres service for a Postgres database. And then there's like Neon4j Aura. Okay, and that's also, I think, I want to do the fully managed use setup. Aura overview. Okay, so bottom line is there's lots of ways for you to get a database, oftentimes with a free tier that you can then use in your applications. Okay, so these are going to be some of the options. I'm not going to get into how to use these right now. I have a Mongo database that can run on my computer, or a Mongo server that runs on my computer. So I'm just going to turn that on, and that's what I'm going to use today. So where's this database that I have coming from? It's literally running on my computer. So I can just run that sudo mongod. Now again, if I wanted to deploy my application, I would then have to get an online database. This is only good for me developing on my computer, but it's there, so that's running. Okay, so I'm just going to let that just kind of run in the background. Okay, and now what I wanted to do is set up a Node project. So I'm going to open up my terminal. Okay, I'm going to assume that you know how to use Node and the basics of Express. This is not a teach you how to use Express video. This is just showing you how to build something with some of these tools that you may already be familiar with. Okay, always keep in mind that learning how to do something, kind of two steps, not just build something without learning what the fundamental tools are. You learn what the tools are, then you do some examples of building things, watching other people build things, and then you experiment with your own ideas and building the things. And that's kind of how you really kind of develop those layers of knowledge. Okay. But with that, I'm going to create some files. So I'm going to touch a server.js. That's going to be our main server file. I'm going to create a new npm project, npm init-y. And that's going to create our package.json. Okay, so I have my package.json here, and with that I can begin installing my dependencies. Okay, also I want to do this using ES module syntax. So in my package.json, I can enable the ability to just use ES module syntax by default by adding the property type and then passing it the property of module. And that'll just make it where it'll run all the files assuming ES module syntax. So we're going to do that. And then I'm going to go back here to my back here to my terminal, and we're going to install some stuff. So we're going to install Express because I'm going to need Express as my backend framework. I'm going to install Morgan because I want logging for my server, so that way I can kind of monitor requests that are coming in to help me debug. I'm going to want Mongoose because that's how I'm going to interact with a Mongo server. I am going to want EJS because we're going to use that for templating. And I am going to want, thinking what else I might want. I think that's good for now. I'm also going to need method override. Actually, we won't need method override. Let me think about that. Do I want method override? No, because I think we can do that. We'll be able to take care of that with HTMX. npm install express morgan mongoose EJS. Okay, so that should be good for now. So then again, that's going to install, and then I should see that pop up in my package.json. So keep an eye over here, and you should see it show up once it's done installing. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. And there you go. So there's my dependencies. Cool. Now, I'm going to do this for the most part in one file. Again, so I'm not going to necessarily have a MVC folder structure because it's going to be a simple project, and I just kind of want you to be able to see sort of how I'm building it and not get too lost in, hey, how does this file connect to that file? Okay, so basically we're going to start off just by bringing in all our dependencies. Okay, so I'm going to do import express from express. I'm going to want, actually I'm also going to want, now I am using the newest version of Node. Okay, so Node -- version 21.4.0. In the more recent version, they did add a native ability to use .env files in Node. So let me actually just look up how you do that, because I actually haven't tried this out yet. So .env files with Node. In the past, you installed a library called .env, and then you would use that package. So it'd be another dependency you'd have to install to do this. So .env with Node. Okay. So let's see here. This is explaining the new functionality. Okay. You command if you don't want to import package in your code. Oh, okay. So that's still using the old way. Okay. Here we go. Starting with Node, you can support .env files. Here we go. That's what I want to know. Okay. So basically here we pass this command node --env file equals, there we go. So that's what we need. We add this flag. Okay, so theoretically, if I want to have a .env file, which is generally a file with like all my secret like passwords and things that you don't want to commit to GitHub, I can now just do like node --env file equals, put the name of the env file there, and then run my command. That would be really annoying to type every time. So this is where it's really good to kind of use your package.json. Okay, so now what I can do is I can set up these scripts, and we'll set my start script, which will be node --env file. Okay, .env server.js. Okay, and then when we develop locally, we're not going to want to use that command because it won't update every time we update our files. That's great for production, where it's just going to run our program as is. So for deployment, I'm going to want to use that start script, but for local development, I'm going to want this. Okay, so I want a dev script, and I'm going to want node I'm going to watch --watch. That's going to allow it to watch my files, --env file. Which should equal .env server.js. And I think this should be equals .env. Let me just double check that those docs, which I had closed. So native .env in Node. Okay. Well, I just want to use the flag. Yep, env.file, it's with the equal sign. Okay. So that's generally how the command should look like. So you see here, it's saying that's going to be this file. So then I can create that file, .env. Okay, and I can put my variables in there. Primarily, the main variable I'm going to want to put in there is my database URL. Okay, so generally, .env variables are always uppercase. It's just convention. And in this case, I want it to be like MongoDB /127.0.01, so my computer. For some reason, it always errors when I use localhost 2020/27017, and we're going to just say, hey, today is December 10th, so we'll just say December 9th, 2023. That'll be the database I'll work out of. So there's my database URL. Okay. Now, again, you would get this from your database provider. So if you're using MongoDB or as your database, you would go get yourself a database from mongodb.com. get the URL, and that would be your database URL. If you're using some other type of database, then that would be your URL. This is the URL that allows your software to know to connect, how to connect to that database. Okay, wonderful. That's really the only variable I want there. I might as well also do port. This is a very typical variable for just determining what port your application is running on. Okay, now I just want to make sure that these environment variables are actually visible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly console.log them, just make sure that this all works. So generally, any environmental variables are going to be inside process.env. That's just this magical object that exists inside of Node. So in Node, I can access that by saying like .database URL. So all those .env variables show up in this object. Console.log. How do you know that? Well, you just have to know how Node works. Process.env .port. So I'm just going to double check that these work. So I'm going to just do a npm run dev to run that dev command. Okay. And let's see here. Do I see the... And yeah, it worked. See, there's a console log of the database URL. And there is the console log of the port variable. Okay. And you can see in the output that it is watching my files. So I don't need to restart my server now. Anytime I make a change to the JavaScript, it's just automatically going to re-update, rerun the program. Okay, so that's all fine and good. So now I can import all the other things. So I'm going to want to import Morgan from Morgan. I'm going to want to import, what else did I install there? Let me go back to my package.json. Mongoose. Mongoose is going to be the only other thing I need to import. Import Mongoose from Mongoose. Okay, so those are my 3 dependencies, and now I can begin building my application. So first thing I'm going to want is to set up my Mongo connection. So let's say set up my Mongo connection. Okay, and then basically the way you do that is I'm going to just take that database URL variable and move it to its own variable. It just makes the code cleaner. So I'm going to say const. So actually, let's just do that in a separate line. So I'm going to just get my environment variables. And I'm going to use destructuring. So I can pull out the specific items from the object by doing this. So by saying port, because I know that's in there. Database URL, I know that's in there because we just console logged them a second ago. And then I'm going to say, hey, pull those out of the process.env object. So this is called object destructuring. So it's going to create me 2 new variables by these names and then pull out the equivalent properties from this object. I have a whole video on destructuring, or many videos on destructuring. So if you want to learn how that all specifically works, just look up destructuring and my name on YouTube, and you can find the videos where I really go deep into that feature. Okay, but now I have those 2 variables nice and accessible. Okay. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go get pull out some of the tools from Mongoose more specifically. So const schema and model. These 2 functions I just want to pull out of the Mongoose object, so I don't have to type in mongoose.schema all the time. Okay, so I'm just going to rip those out. Okay, so now I have these all kind of set and ready to go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to Mongo, and this mongoose.connect function does exactly that. It's going to take the URL from my database and connect to it, and then I can pass an object with any kind of configurations. So these are the configurations. Okay, and I can see already down here it's connecting, but it's giving me some warnings. So it's saying, hey, this is not needed anymore. So it's telling me pretty much that I can just take out this object. Okay, so again, their warnings are not telling me there's a problem. It's just saying, hey, you know, honestly, things have changed. You don't really need to do that anymore. Okay, and you see now I'm not getting those warnings down here anymore. Cool. Okay, so we are connected. But now the thing is that I'd like there to be a little text message down here that tells me that I'm connected. Okay, so I'm going to want to set up connection messages. So what I can do is I can create an event. Okay, so I can do mongoose.connection.on. Okay, and this first message will be when it's on connected. Basically, when the connected status occurs on our server, it's just going to give us a little message saying connected to Mongo, which we'll see right there. So that means it's successfully connected. I'm also going to want a message when it's disconnected. Okay. And we'll run that in a second. And one for when there's an error. Okay. Let's see why it's complaining. Oh, because there's these semicolons. There we go. That should fix it. Okay, because this is all one line. So the semicolons were breaking up the line. Even though they're on multiple lines, it's still one line of code. So if I put a semicolon in the middle of it, it's going to break it up. So now it's working. So now what's going to happen is that anytime I connect to Mongo, I'll notice it'll say connected to Mongo, which I see right there. And if there's an error, I can see the error. Okay, I'd actually like the error to be console logged. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to put a separate line and just put the, I want the error logged as well. And then the error comes in as an argument to that function. I know that because I've read the documentation. Okay, most of these things you don't just magically know. You read the documentation for these tools, aka the instruction manuals, and you see how they work. Okay, but again, this is going to set up all those little messages, so that way down here I can see when it's connected, when it's not. Just gives me nice visible goodies. Okay, so we're good there. Okay, wonderful. So we've established our connection to Mongo. Now what I'd like to do is set up my Express app. Okay, so create Express application. Okay, which will just be const app equals Express. So basically the Express function returns this application object that I can use to build my application. And then from there, I'm going to want to register some middleware. Okay, because we have some middleware up here that we kind of have set up. Okay, so the middleware that I'm going to specifically want, let me just think if there's any other middleware that I want. I want Morgan, so there's that. Okay, and thinking if there's anything else I want. I guess I am going to want a static server, so app.use express.static. Okay, and then I'm going to want to parse. I'm going to have form submission, so I'm going to want to make sure I parse bodies appropriately. So that means I'm going to want express.json, and I'm going to want app.use express.url encoded. These are built to parse different types of request bodies. So that way, if it's a JSON, if my site submits the data as JSON, I'm going to parse it. And if my website submits the data as URL encoded data, and just to show you the difference, like JSON data looks like this, where it's like, key value. Like that's like how JSON data looks like. Okay, URL encoded data, on the other hand, looks like that. Okay, key equals value and key equals value. Okay, there's different ways that a website might submit data to the server, and it's up to the server to know how to read that data, and that's what these two lines are doing. When the data looks like this, it's going to know how to break it down because of this line right here, and when the data looks like this, it's going to know how to break it down because of this line right here. Okay, and then again, this is just going to create a static server, which will allow us to kind of have CSS files and JavaScript files that we may attach to our HTML. Okay, all fine and good. Now we're going to want, and actually I should probably put this before the model, and actually maybe even before the Express application. We want to create our to-do model. Now a model for a database is essentially a description of the type of data you're storing. Okay, and then each type of data is going to get its own place to store it in the database. In document databases like Mongo, it's referred to as a collection. In a SQL database like Postgres, it would be referred to as a table. Okay, so then here we have it. So basically what we're doing is first I have to create the schema. That's the design of what a to-do looks like. So basically what I'm saying is that a to-do is an object that has two properties, title and complete. So like the title of the to-do and a Boolean on whether it is complete or not. Okay. And now I want to create a model. Okay. And that's what we use this model function. And again, I pulled these out of the Mongoose object back up here. Okay. So this is going to create our model. Create our model to do schema. So basically what I'm saying is like, hey, there's something I want to be able to store in my database. We're going to store it under the name to do, and everything that's stored in this collection should follow these are the rules. Like this is the rule set. Like this is what it has to look like. It has to be objects that look like this. Okay, that's essentially what we're doing. Okay, so we have our model. Wonderful. And now what we can do is we can create we can start creating our website. Okay. So first we'll create like our main page. Okay. So we're going to create our main page route. Okay. So we'll say app.get. Okay. And we're not going to use send file. We're going to use render. And we're going to render, we'll call it main.html, just so that we know it's our main page. And again, it has to be main.EJS actually. Okay, because we're using EJS as our templating engine. So whenever I use res.render, it's going to look for that file in a folder called views. So I'm going to create that folder here. And now I need to, in that folder, create main.ejs. Okay. And I'm going to just put in my HTML boilerplate. There it is. So we're going to call it our to-do app. Okay. And then we're going to basically have a header that's going to say, hey, H1, our to-do app. Also in that header will be our navigation. We'll put any kind of buttons or navigation that we want. Okay. Then we're going to have the main section of our website. Okay, which is going to have two divs. A div with an ID that's going to be sort of called main display. Okay, that's going to be generally where we display like lists of to-dos or details about to-dos. Okay, and then we're going to have a div with an ID of forms. Okay, and that's where we'll render forms that we want to render. Okay, because we're going to use HTMX. So instead of me having to create a separate complete HTML page for each thing, HTMX is going to be able to kind of like intelligently swap out the HTML into these divs. Okay, and we'll leave it at that. That should pretty much give us a nice little setup for our page. Okay. But before we can go any further, I still got to finish the server. The server still needs a listener because, again, the server doesn't respond to requests until it starts to listen. So we're going to turn on the server. Okay, and that's going to be this command right here. Basically, we're going to start it on port. And then when the server starts off, it's going to say, hey, I'm listening on whatever port that is. And we see that command here. So we see here we're connected to Mongo. We're listening on port 444. Everything is looking good. Okay, as it should. Okay. So now let's see what happens if I go to localhost 444. Okay, and see if we get our to-do app. Okay, so now let's bring this back home so that way we can see everything at the same time. Wonderful. Now what I want to do is I'm going to want to put a couple example to-dos in the database so we have them to work with. Okay. Or actually we can start off with being able to create a to-do, I guess. So let's do that first. Okay, so first thing I need is in that main page, we need a link. Well, first I need to set up HTMX. So let's go grab HTMX because I can't use HTMX unless I put it in the script tag. So HTMX, here it is, high power tools. Let's go there, let's grab it. Okay, here's the script tag. So I'm just copy that right over, put that right there. Awesome. So now what's going to happen here is that in my nav, we are going to have several divs with the class of link, which we may style later. Okay. And yeah. So this first one, we're going to have an A tag in it. And then each of these divs will be wrapped in an A tag. Okay. href. I don't know if I actually do want to make them a link. I just think I just want to keep it as a div. Okay. Because I'm going to use HTMX to drive the navigation. Okay, so really what I want to do is describe what I want to happen in here. So I'm going to say hx get. That has to do with HTMX. That's part of this whole HTMX framework. So I'm going to say, hey, when you click, when this particular div gets triggered, what it's going to do is that I want it to make a request to a URL that we haven't decided yet. Okay. Now, what is the trigger? Is going to be a click. hx trigger is the click. Okay, let me just make sure that that's how we would write that. Okay, hx swap, we'll get there. And let's go back to reference docs. Okay. Yep, so we're seeing that that's going to be the method. Yeah, so the trigger is just going to be that right there. So click is perfect. Okay. And then we need to say, what is the hx target? Like where, once you do this request, where should it go? So in this case, you express it through CSS. So you see right here, I'm expressing it through like an ID. So I'm going to say, hey, when you click on this thing, I want you to take the output that you get back and put it in the div that has the ID of main display. Okay. And we'll have a bunch of different links. So in this case, we'll say, you know, like list of to-dos. Okay, and we're going to copy all these divs in there, like a few divs in there. Let me just actually do a quick save on this so that way it auto formats. Nice. Okay. Let's make a few of these divs. Okay. And I'm going to say, hey, we want to, actually the second one will be add a to-do. I don't think that's all we really need. Okay, so let's see how this page is looking. So if I go back, the server is running and I hit refresh. So we have these two things. Okay. Now, right now, they're not going to do what I want them to do. What I'm going to focus on right now is adding a to-do. Now, I don't want to, when you click add a to-do, it should show up the form. And I don't want the form to show up in the main display. I want it to show up in this div here. So I'm going to change this to target forms. Okay. So that's where it's going to target, although I accidentally got rid of the class. Okay, for when we style it later. Okay, and just to be extra explicit, you can do hx swap, and that just tells it that, hey, when you swap out the HTML, the way you're going to swap it is that you're going to swap out what's inside the div, not the div itself. So basically what it'll do is it'll change the HTML inside that targeted div that I specify here. So I'm going to say, hey, whenever you click this link, take the HTML inside this, in this case, in this div, and swap it out with the result of making a GET request to whatever URL. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is create that URL that's going to generate our form. Okay. So right now I don't see much, and honestly, we should probably style this a little bit because right now there's no way for me to tell like that these are links. Okay, and it's kind of looking ugly. So if I want to style this, I'm going to add a link to our CSS file right over here. Okay, so I'm going to say, which we don't have a CSS file yet. Okay, which I'll just, main CSS is fine. We'll just go with that. Okay, for that, I need to take advantage of that static folder that we set up. So again, earlier we did this line right here. Okay, this line right here is going to allow me to create a public folder, a folder called public, which I can create files that I can easily reference. So in this case in here, I'm going to create that main.css file. And then if I go back to my EJS file, I can now do /main.css. And then that's going to point to that file. Okay. So because it basically, whenever you do like / something, it's going to be referring to whatever's in this public folder. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the general idea. Okay, so now I can go back to my main.ejs here. Or actually go to my server.js to start creating that. Oh, actually, no, I was styling. That's what I was doing. Okay, so let's style. So again, I want to style this nav. So let's do that. So let's go through the header. Let's go to my public CSS. So first we're going to start a target that h1. So header h1. Okay, we're going to say that text align center. Okay, we're going to give it a font size. Font size is fine, but we're going to say font family. Let's go with Gill Sans, why not? And text align. What else do I want to do with it? Say background color. Choose something interesting. We'll say brown. So then we'll make the color of the font white, so that way it contrasts with that brown. And now when I refresh the page, we see that, and that looks nice. Okay, and I want to get rid of that. Now notice like that, there's like a little bit of a gap here. I kind of want to get rid of that. So I want to do a little mini reset. So I'm just going to target everything and get rid of all margin. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all padding. Okay, and then I'm going to add border box or box sizing and make that border box. Okay, so now if I refresh this, see, there we go. Now there's not that little white space anymore because there's not that sort of like default margin. So that looks a little bit better. Okay, now our links still look like not great. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, there's going to be a nav, because that's the two divs are inside of the nav. And that's not what I want. Well, let's see here. How does that work? Okay, yeah, that's not so bad. That looks pretty decent. Okay. Although I might want to change the color just a little bit. Maybe not quite to that. Okay. Cool, and then if I refresh, okay, that works for me. Only thing I would want to do is maybe put a little more padding here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, but see, it still doesn't quite look like these are links. Okay, so I want to kind of change that. So what I want to do is say, hey, nav. Inside of there should be probably something with a class of link. I'm going to want to style those. Okay, I'm going to say, that's not what I want to do. I want to do text decoration. Okay. No, I don't want text decoration. I want text transform. Uppercase, so that way they're all uppercase letters as a link. I want there to be, that's good. Okay. And then I'm going to put a little transition on here for background color. Transition for background color, 0.5 seconds. For color, 0.5 seconds. So that way I can switch the background and font color, and it'll look kind of give it a cool effect. So nav, link cover. Okay, so what that's going to do is kind of switch the colors around a little bit, although maybe somewhere in the middle. Yeah, that's fine. So now let's refresh the page so you can see the effect. So now see, that's going to give you a little bit more clarity that that's something you can click on. Now, only other thing I want to do is change the cursor to pointer. And I'm also going to want to give this maybe a little bit more padding. Say 10 pixels. Okay. And now we refresh. That's looking a bit better. Okay, so now our nav looks like a nav. So it now looks like I can click on add a to do. Okay, that's better. Okay. So now I'm gonna head over to server.js. We want to generate that place so that way we can like generate our form. Okay, so I'm gonna create another link. So this is gonna be called our our new route. Okay, so this should be to /to-do/new. Okay, and basically what it'll do is it's gonna return the form to create a to-do. That's what this route does. So it's gonna be basically that. Yeah, that's perfect. So basically what it's going to do is when people make a GET request to /to-do/new, it'll return the results of this form. Okay, so I'm going to go update my main.ejs. So now when you do click on the added to-do, it knows /to-do/new. Okay, and that it knows. Let me go back to server.js /to-do/new. So we need to create a new.ejs. Okay, and I don't need to create the whole HTML boilerplate because I'm using HTMX. So it's going to take whatever HTML I do generate and just swap it out. So in this case, all I have to really focus on is creating the form. Okay. Okay, so now I can just sit there and say, hey, when you submit this form, what's going to happen is that it's going to take an action, and that action is going to submit to it's going to be the /to-do, and the method is going to be a post. So it's going to make a post request to /to-do. Okay, and then inside of there, we're just going to want an input. Okay, but I don't want it just to do title. What I want it to be is just title. Okay, and then we're going to have a submit button. To add the to-do. And that'll trigger the response. Okay. So now theoretically this works. I should click add to-do and this form should appear. Okay. That didn't quite do what I wanted it to do, so let's find out why. Instead of what it did is it just called the same page. So let's examine that. Well, I don't think it's because I didn't refresh yet. So let's see if I click add to do. Yep, see what it is, it injected the form into that div. So notice this is still there. So what HTMX is doing is it's taking the HTML for the other route and injecting it where I specified in the current page that I have active. Okay, giving that really nice feel. Okay, and then I can style that and make that a little bit nicer. Okay, so I might want to do something like this. So I can go now just style that form, that ID of form. Let's see here, what did I call that? 1 second. Okay. Cool. So now this should basically render the page. Basically, well, let's see here. Basically, what this will do is create a to-do when you submit it. So that's good. And that should say list of to-dos, not list of todays. So let me go fix that. Main.ejs, list of to-dos. Cool. Okay. And then we need to actually create the route that handles when you submit that request, that creates the to-dos. So basically, when you submit that form, it's going to make a post request. So we have to create a create route. Okay, which is basically that. Okay, /to-do. It's going to create. We're going to use an async function so that we can use async await instead of doing .thens all the time. But essentially, what it's going to do, it's going to create a new to-do. Okay, using to-do.create. I'm going to pass in the rec body. Now, actually, even before I do that, what I'm going to want to do is do this. I'm going to say, hey, const rec.body. So rec.body that complete equals false. Perfect. Because what happens is that the form doesn't provide a complete value, right? If we take a look at our form here in new, we're only providing a title property. Okay, we only have one input for title. no point in asking them whether it's true or false. Why should a to-do be true ever? Because what's the point of tracking a to-do if you already did it? So in that case, we're going to want them to start out as false. Okay, so back to my server.js. So again, we're going to want to adjust that property. So that way rec.body has a complete and a title property before we actually add it to our database. This adds it to our database, and then this should redirect back to our main page. Just because we're not using HTMX is not handling the form submission. And then this will handle any errors that happen. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now what should I do? Well, we'll style it afterwards. Then I also going to want to create the reaction. What happens when you click on list of to-dos? Okay, what's going to happen is I'm going to want the to-dos to be listed here. Okay, so that's going to be called our index route. So I'll put that index route kind of over here to the top. Our index route / to-do show is going to show all the to-dos. So that's going to be app.get. And what I want to do is first we're going to go get all the to-dos. So we're going to go get all the to-dos from the database. Okay, so we use our to-do model. So I'm going to say const to-dos equals await to-do dot find. Okay, that's the mongoose function. That's going to give me all the to-dos. Again, how do I know that? Read the Mongo documentation, read the Mongoose documentation that shows me how to use these tools. This is not a Mongoose lesson. I do have videos on Mongoose, which you can look up. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send those to-dos to EJS. Okay, so we're going to render an index.ejs with the to-dos. So we're going to do that. We send over, so now we're sending over the to-dos to EJS so we can use the to-dos in a template. So now I got to create a new index.ejs. So new folder or new file, index.ejs. And then here what I'm going to do is we're just going to create a bunch of divs. Okay, so we're going to say, we're going to use this, and we're going to say for let, actually I'm going to use a for each loop. So to-dos, and just to confirm, yep, so we passed it in there as to-dos, so that's how I know it's going to be called to-dos. So to-dos dot for each, using a for each loop, because again, EJS allows you to write JavaScript in your templates. So I'm going to say, hey, what I want to do is that for each to-do, I want to generate the following output. So this is where that loop begins. And this is where that loop ends. And now I'm going to want to describe kind of what I want to show. So what I want to show is, this actually is not so bad. So we'll kind of go with that. Which is going to be a div. Okay, so we're seeing this div is going to be the to-do. Here we're showing the title of the to-do. There is no description property, so let's take that out. Okay, if anything, that should be a complete. Okay, and what that should do is maybe we'll put h4. And then what we do here is we'll show something depending on whether the to-do is complete or not. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll say equals the result of if to-do.complete is true. So I'm going to use a ternary operator. We'll show one thing versus another. Okay, and I'm going to use emojis. So I'm going to say, hey, green emoji. Okay, green circle emoji is fine with me. So I'm going to copy that over, put that here in my JavaScript, because again, since we use UTF-8 nowadays, I can use emojis in my JavaScript. And then we'll use the red circle as the alternative. Copy. There we go. So essentially, if complete is true, it'll be green. And if complete is red, it'll show the red emoji. And then it'll actually have a form here that is going to use, well, in this case, it's using method override. So I'm going to have to add method override. Is that what I want to do? We'll go with it for now. So I'll go back and add method override. So I'm going to create another terminal. And I'm going to npm install method override. It's another dependency that'll allow me to take advantage of this piece right here. Okay. Cool. And essentially what this is going to do is adding me an update button and a delete button. So essentially this is going to be my method. Well, this is going to be delete. There's my delete button. And then this is going to be my update form, which will allow me to update, although I want to be able to update whether it's been completed or not. Actually, let's just, and actually you don't even need to update the name of the to-do. It should just be like a complete button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this form. And I'm going to copy this form because I'm going to kind of want to work more like this. Just be a button. And we're just going to say complete. Okay, and then this is going to be a put because we're going to be updating it. Okay, and then the URL, we'll just call it /id/complete. Okay. Actually, nope, I put that in the wrong spot. /complete. Okay, so it's the ID right there in the URL. Because ID is going to be how we know which one you're deleting or updating. Okay. And again, anytime you see these little squid marks, that's where EJS comes in. EJS is going to, before we send the HTML down to the user, it's going to use those, swap out the right variable, and so forth. Cool. Now, let's see here. I'm just debating whether I want to handle any of these different, but we'll keep it like that for now. Okay. Cool. So now I should be able to, I should be able to add a to-do and say, okay, hey, I'm going to say eat breakfast. And then I am going to click on the list of to-dos, except that is still not pointing to the right URL. So I need to go see, hey, where's my index, which is just /to-do. So I'm going to go update my main.ejs. So that way when you click on this, this clicks to /to-do. Okay, and that didn't quite work. Is my server still running? Ah, so there's an error here. So let's see what the error says. Valid or unexpected token following EJS, but what line? So let me take a look at our index.ejs. So something funky here. To-dos at for each div h3 to-do.title. Oh, it's because, no, there should be a to-do ID property. So that makes sense. But is it to-do completed? Let me go back to the server.js. What's the schema here? Yeah, no, it's complete. So that makes sense. Why doesn't it like it? Let's take a look at that route. Async rec res.render. Yeah, I mean, that looks all good. Fortunately, it's not telling me. So one way I could do this is I could just go directly to that link. So localhost 444/to-do. Okay, and this should give me that same error. Okay, so still an invalid, same error. So something's wrong with the EJS in the index.ejs file. So what I need to do is examine it, look for something that's missing. So let's see here, div to do dot title, to do dot complete. This should be fine. Class to do. Method put. Title. Yeah. Okay, so that's all matching. Go back to index.ejs or server.js. Take a look at the route. Get all the to-dos. Wait to do.find. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this HTML here. Or actually, just do it this way. Okay. Still. Let's keep it simple, I guess. Let's start off simple. Let's just say div, class to do. And each one's just going to have right now is the name of the to-do. Let's just start off with that. To-do title. Okay, and let's refresh. Okay, so that worked. Okay, so it's probably just something was wrong in all that code that I wasn't seeing. Okay, so we're rendering the name. Okay, so in that case, let's first just wrap that in like a H2. Okay. And then let's have that H3. That is going to be if to do dot complete completed. Keep it simple. Instead of fishing out all those emojis, false or not completed. And let's just see if it shows that. Okay, good. Okay, so we're getting there. Now, good. Okay, so now I can add a to-do. Just be like, hey, eat lunch. And say, hey, I want to look at the list of to-dos. And, we're getting somewhere. Cool. Okay. So now I can just style this a little bit, make this look a little bit nicer. So first we'll target the to-do area. Okay, so let me just take a look at that index.ejs. Actually, the HTML. Which would be main. And what I want to see is main display. So main display. Okay, and what I'm going to want to do here is I want to say that the background color, I wanted to have something a little soft in the back. we'll say Sienna. Okay, with 100%, padding 10 pixels. Okay, and then when I refresh this, okay, let's make the color white. Okay, nice. So now what we're going to do is target those to-do class. So main display. No, I don't want all that. What I want to target is the class of to-do. That's inside of there, not space. So that was a child. Okay. And yes, I do want them to be flex, so that makes sense to me. Space between sounds good. Line items, that's good. Padding 10 back. Yeah, this all looks pretty good to me. So let's try that out. Okay, and you see that's nice little like setup. I can see my to-dos. Pretty cool. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So this is all starting to look pretty good. Cool. Now I'd like it where you can click on this and it'll just mark it completed. Okay, so let's go back to our index.EJS, and we're going to use HTMX to make it, hey, when you click on this H3, okay, when you click on this H3, all that stuff is going to happen. So we have to do like HX. It's going to be a put request, okay, and it should make a put request to /todo/ todo._ID, because everything in Mongo has an ID, this underscore ID property we can use to leverage that's unique. /complete. Okay, so that way you can complete it. Then what I want you to do is I want you the target, so the result, what it gets sent back, I want it to be the result of, I want it to go in that same place, main display. So it's going to replace it. Okay, and that should be good. So we just need to make that route now. Okay, so I'm going to go to server.js, and I'm going to create a completed route. So we'll call this our update route. And this is going to just say /, and actually, yeah, I don't even need the right completed. So let me just go back to, where is it? Index.EJS. This could just literally be /todo/ID. And just be a put request to that, so that would work for me. So it'll be update route. Marks to-do as completed. So again, that's going to be a put request, app.put. Okay. And, oh, okay, that's perfect. Okay, so basically what it's going to do is, again, when you make a request to do/ID, and the ID being the ID of that particular to-do, okay, what it's going to do, it's going to make the request to Mongo based on that ID that's in the URL, and then set completed to true. Okay, awesome. Now, I don't want it to do that. Actually, what I want it to do is res.render, basically literally do what the index route does. So I can just literally copy that out. It's going to res.render index, but what it's going to do first is go get the to-do. So I can just literally copy that line as well. Const all the to-dos. Okay. So essentially what will happen is that it will update that to-do, go get the new list of to-dos, rebuild that section, that whole list of to-dos, and then that'll get swapped out. Okay. So let me save that just so that it looks all nicer. Good. And then let me refresh this page. Now I click list of to-dos. And let's see here if I click on eat breakfast. And see, now it's marked completed. How nice is that? Okay, that's what's pretty neat about HTMX. See, it doesn't even you don't even realize we're like moving between pages. Okay, when you use it to its max. Okay, cool. And let's see here. Res.render, res.log. I mean, that's all fun and good. The only thing I want to do is just make that look a little bit more clickable. So that's a styling thing. So that's going to be, I want to take care of those H3s inside the to-do class. And I wanted to do this when you hover. And I would just want to make their font color something a little bit different. We'll just say that for now. So now when I bring up the page, see these become, and then I want to make sure that the cursor's pointer. Okay. Awesome. Okay, cool. So far, so good. Now we want to make it where you can, and actually this is not pretty decent, being able to see a completed to-do, but what if you want to delete a to-do? We could add that functionality. But first let's make it where, like now if I refresh the page, you see there's like no list of to-dos. I would like to grab that list of to-dos right away. So what I want to do is update the index or update the main so that way it has that list of to-dos off the bat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is in here, my server.js, I'm going to update that main route, okay, to go get to-dos. Okay, so we're going to just literally copy that stuff from our index route. Okay. And move that over to our main route. No, don't want to do that. Or at least what I do want to do is at least copy the getting the to-dos. Okay, and I am going to want to pass the to-dos to the main.ejs template here. And I'm going to want to make this function async so that we can use the await keyword. Okay, what's it complaining about now? But it is an async function now. Too many parentheses here, yes. Okay, too many commas. I think now we're good. Okay, cool. So by doing that, what I can do now is I can take this code from the index EJS and move it over to main. So that way it initially has the to-dos to begin with. So move it to the main.ejs, move it to where that main display is. Okay, and again, it's going to get swapped out whenever we do things. But this way, every time I refresh the page, the to-dos are already there. And then when I want to add a to-do, I'll click on this, and we should probably style that to make that look a little bit better. Okay, so again, that's going to be in forms. So let me just style that real quick. Okay. And one thing I want to do, well, I'll do it afterwards. Main or forms. Okay, I want this to have a background color. Oh, that's fine. And I want the inputs that are in there to, okay, and the buttons that are in there to, and again, what I'm doing is I'm using CSS nesting where I can actually nest a style instead of another style. It just makes it a little bit easier. Okay. That's all good. But I also want to do like background color white, color okay, and let's see how that kind of all turns out. I want to add a to-do. And see, now that form looks a bit better. Okay, I probably want to center that a little bit. Okay. Text align center. So let's refresh. Okay, and there we go. We're starting to look. It's starting to look like a to-do. The only issue now is that when I add a to-do, eat dinner. Okay, now that works pretty well now. Okay, eat dinner, and then again, if I click eat lunch, marks it as completed. And yeah, we got a pretty decent working to-do app. There's some improvements I can make, but yeah, you got a to-do app, and then again, we can add something so that way you can just, when you click add a delete button. So what we can do is let's go back to our index.ejs here. Okay. And the thing is that I don't want to have to be updating this twice. So what I'm going to do is, what I can do is that here in this main.ejs, I could actually, instead of having all of this in here like this, I could leverage a feature of EJS that will allow me to inject it in there. And what I do is I would just say squid sign minus sign, and I just say include index.ejs. So this way I'm using the exact same thing that's in this file here. So I don't have to like literally update anytime I make a change. If I update here, it's going to update both places. Okay, so that's going to make it a little bit nicer. So if I refresh, I'm still getting the same result, but I'm not copying that whole file here. I'm just using what I already have in a separate file, making it, again, just making it, my code more maintainable. So now I can go back here and say, okay, I want there to be another H3, so that we can borrow from the styling we have for the other H3. Okay, and we can say hx delete, which is going to go to slash to do slash the ID of that to do. So to do dot underscore ID. Okay, and good. And then again, hx target. Still going to be that main display. That's where it'll put the result up on. Oh, I see what I did. I gotta complete this here. Okay, main display. And then again, this H3 is just gonna be a giant X. Okay, so when you click on it, it'll delete it. So now when I refresh this, there's like now an X. We could make it look a little bit nicer, but we'll go with it. Okay, and that's going to send the delete request. So now all I have to do is create another route that handles that. Okay, so it could be almost like the put route. So I can copy this update route for the most part. We're going to say call this our delete route. Deletes a to do. And then we're going to say app.delete. Okay, and it kind of knows where I want to go. So let's take a look. Okay, wait, res.render indexed perfect. So what it's doing, it's deleting the to-do. Okay, GitHub Copilot, so smart. Picked up on my change of pattern really quickly. That's so neat. Okay, but basically what I'm doing is I'm deleting the to-do from the database based on the param in the URL. And then we are going to go back and refetch the list of to-dos. And then go re-render that index.ejs, and then that's going to get sent back. HTMX will swap it out, and it'll delete. Okay, so, and there we go. We're good. So now if I refresh this, I should be able to delete these now. Eat dinner, gone. Eat lunch, gone. I want to add a to-do. Eat lunch. Okay, so now I have a fully functioning to-do app working with the database. You know, that's actually really fast and has a really smooth feel to it, without having to use a framework like React or Angular, just a little bit of HTMX and just a lot of, you know, work on the server. So that's why people really like HTMX, because it makes it where, you know, this kind of has a lot of feels of things that look like they would have probably needed a framework like React or Angular to do. But really, I just wrote a bunch of HTML and I'm just swapping HTML, giving it that feel. So it's pretty cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. My name is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. Have a great day and enjoy. And again, you can always find the code for any of these videos through the link in the video description. So I'll see you all later. Have a great day.